Would you rather date a girl who's hot but crazy or ugly but normal? I was on a date with the baddest bee I've ever laid my eyes on when she asked me, should we take things up to your place? Smelling the alcohol on her breath, I refused. Veronica's face crumpled like I'd slapped her. You don't want me? She kept repeating it, getting louder each time. I got us a hotel room and held her while she cried, but the more I comforted her, the angrier she got. Just take it, she screamed, putting my hand on her chest. I pulled my hand away gently, and she completely broke down. This is what I'm for, she sobbed into my shoulder. Men see this body and they take it. That's how it works. I held her hair back while she threw up, and when I brought her water, she stared at me like I'd grown a second head. 2 weeks later, she called at 2 a.m. I can't stop thinking about that night. Her voice was small. I was already grabbing my keys to see her. That's how we started. Her calling, me driving over, talking until our voices went hoarse. 3 months in and I was crazy about her. This is Veronica, I'd tell people, the funniest person I know. She'd freeze every time, then whisper later, why don't you tell them I'm hot? Is something wrong with me? When I said I loved her mind, she'd look physically ill. We were arguing about her going through my phone when she suddenly pulled her dress over her head. Veronica, what are you? She straddled my lap, moving mechanically. I lifted her off gently. Baby, I just want to talk about boundaries. Are you gay? She screamed. Is that it? Or do you have someone else? Someone prettier? She was hyperventilating. Why won't you just use me like you're supposed to? Because I love you. Stop lying. Just screw me and get it over with. She collapsed on the floor, sobbing. I held her for 3 hours while she shook, whispering, I'm broken. I'm so broken. Over and over. By month 6, she was unraveling. She'd show up at my office in tiny skirts, watching my coworkers. Did you see how Steve looked at me? You must want to kill him. When I said I trusted her, she'd laugh bitterly. You're either gay or the world's best liar. Then came the promotion party announcement. Veronica's entire demeanor shifted. That's when you'll do it, she said, voice dead. All that alcohol, all those pretty girls celebrating. That's when you'll finally cheat. Veronica, no. She pulled out her phone and Venmo'd me $5,000. Just do it now. Find someone tonight. I can't take the waiting anymore. Are you insane? I'm being practical. You're going to cheat eventually. Just get it over with so I can stop waiting for it. When I refused, her face went blank. Fine. Then I'll make it happen myself. The night of the party, she kissed me goodbye like she was never seeing me again. I'm too sick to go, she said, not meeting my eyes. Something felt deeply wrong, but I couldn't place it. At the party, I was mid-conversation when I smelled it. Jasmine's perfume, my dead sister's perfume. I turned and nearly passed out. This woman looked exactly like Jasmine. Same dark hair, same head tilt, same everything. Tommy Bear? She said, using Jasmine's childhood nickname for me. My legs went weak. She touched the scar on my hand, the one Jasmine gave me when we were kids, and traced it with her finger. Remember when I did this? I ran outside, unable to breathe. The world was spinning. She followed me. Jasmine would want you to be happy, she whispered, leaning in to kiss me. I shoved her away, sobbing. You're not her! She's dead! The woman's demeanor instantly changed. My gosh, your girlfriend paid me $5,000 to do this. Said you had a dead sister thing I could work with. I'm supposed to seduce you dressed like this. What? I couldn't process the words. She pulled out her phone, showing me messages from Veronica. Photos of Jasmine from my apartment. Instructions. Call him Tommy Bear. Touch the scar on his left hand. Wear this perfume. Each detail of my dead sister weaponized. When I confronted Veronica with the recordings, she smiled serenely. You were supposed to hurt me, she kept saying, like everyone else does. You were supposed to prove me right. You're crazy, I finally said. That's when she reached her hand into her pocket and pulled out a white stick. 2 pink lines. Looks like you're stuck with me, she smirked. I stared at that white stick in her hand, those 2 pink lines burning into my brain while my mind raced through the calendar. We hadn't had sex in 3 weeks, not since her last big meltdown when she threw my laptop across the room because I got a text from a female coworker about a project deadline. My voice came out steady, even though my chest felt tight. We need to get this confirmed at a clinic together. Her whole face changed, that sweet smile twisting into something ugly as she jumped up from the couch and started pacing. So now you're calling me a liar? She waved the test around like a weapon. Or wait, let me guess. You got someone else pregnant and now you're worried about timelines? Her eyes had that familiar gleam, that look she got when she was about to spin everything around and make herself the victim. I didn't bite this time, just pulled out my phone and started typing a message to Adam, my coworker who'd been at the party and saw everything go down. Something serious happened. Need to talk tomorrow. No other details. Just enough to let him know I needed backup. Veronica stopped pacing to watch me, her smirk starting to fade when she realized I wasn't going to fight back or defend myself against her crazy accusations. My phone buzzed almost immediately with Adam's response saying he was there for whatever I needed, and just knowing someone else knew something was wrong made it easier to breathe. I stood up from the couch and grabbed a blanket from the closet. "I'm sleeping out here tonight. We'll figure out next steps tomorrow." She started to say something, but I just walked past her to the bathroom to brush my teeth, closing the door behind me and locking it for the first time in our relationship. I could hear her stomping around the bedroom, slamming drawers and muttering loud enough for me to hear, but I just turned on the water and let it drown her out. When I came back out, she was standing in the bedroom doorway holding that test like it was her winning lottery ticket, but I just laid down on the couch and turned my back to her. First thing in the morning, while she was still sleeping, I opened my phone and went straight to Venmo, finding that $5,000 payment she'd sent me weeks ago when she wanted me to cheat on her. My fingers shook a little as I typed, "returning this" in the note section, and hit refund, watching the money leave my account and knowing I was cutting one of the strings she thought she had on me. The coffee maker was loud in the quiet apartment as I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, creating a new folder and labeling it evidence, even though my hands were shaking because I knew what this meant. I started dragging everything into it: the screenshot Saylor had shown me at the party of Veronica's messages, the voice recording I'd made. When Saylor confessed what she'd been hired to do, even the photo I'd taken of that perfume bottle before I threw it away, because something told me I might need proof. Each file made my stomach turn a little more, seeing it all laid out like a case file of how messed up this whole thing had become. I found Saylor's number in the screenshots and copied it into my phone, typing out a message asking if she'd be willing to put in writing what Veronica had hired her to do, that I wasn't looking to cause her problems but needed documentation. Within an hour, she wrote back saying she felt awful about the whole thing and would help however she could, that she'd had no idea how sick it all was until she saw my reaction at the party. She sent me a long email with dates, payment amounts, and copies of every message Veronica had sent her, including ones where Veronica specifically said to wear my dead sister's perfume and use her nickname for me. My phone started going crazy around noon with messages from Veronica, who'd finally woken up and found the Venmo refund. First, it was declarations of love, then threats to hurt herself if I left her, then accusations that I must be gay, then back to saying she needed me and couldn't live without me. The same cycle she always went through, but faster this time, more desperate. I only sent one message back. "We need to do a blood test at a clinic to confirm the pregnancy and establish timeline." She responded with 20 messages in 5 minutes, but I didn't read them. Just called the closest medical clinic and asked about pregnancy confirmation appointments. The receptionist was super helpful, explaining they could do blood work that would show exactly how far along someone was if they were actually pregnant, and I scheduled an appointment for both of us 3 days out. I texted Veronica the date, time, and address, then put my phone on silent because the messages kept coming, her photo lighting up my screen over and over. She sent crying emojis and said I was treating her like a criminal, but buried in all the drama was one word: fine. 3 days later, I drove us to the clinic in complete silence while she stared out the window with her arms crossed. She'd dressed up like we were going somewhere fancy instead of a medical office, full makeup and a tight dress that seemed weird for a doctor visit. We walked through the sliding doors together, and I could feel her getting more tense with each step toward the reception desk. The waiting room was mostly empty, just an older couple and a woman with a baby, normal people doing normal medical stuff while we were there for something insane. Veronica made it all the way to the check-in desk, even started giving her name to the receptionist, when suddenly she grabbed her chest and gasped, "I can't! I'm having a panic attack, the needles, I can't do needles!" She spun around and practically ran for the door, her heels clicking on the tile floor as she rushed outside. I stood there while the confused receptionist looked between me and the door, explaining that they couldn't proceed without both parties present for this type of confirmation testing. I stayed at the desk after she explained this and asked if there were other ways to verify pregnancy when someone wouldn't cooperate. The receptionist looked at me with sympathy and explained that medical privacy laws meant Veronica had to consent to sharing any results. She said I couldn't force verification without her cooperation, which left me with basically no options. I thanked her and walked out to my car feeling completely stuck. That evening at work, I couldn't focus on anything and kept messing up simple tasks. Adam noticed me staring at my computer screen without actually doing anything and came over to my desk. He asked if I wanted to grab a beer after our shift ended. I was so grateful for the normal offer that I almost cried right there. We went to this regular sports bar down the street where nobody from work usually went. I sat there with my beer getting warm while Adam talked about some project deadline. Finally, I just blurted out what happened at the party with someone pretending to be Jasmine. His face went completely white, and his jaw actually dropped open. He put his beer down hard enough that some spilled on the table. He said HR needed to know immediately since it happened at a company event. I hadn't even thought about how this affected my job, but he was right. The next morning, I sat in Geeta's office with my phone in my shaking hands. I played her the recording of Saylor confessing what Veronica had hired her to do. Then I showed her all the screenshots of the messages with the instructions about Jasmine. Geeta took notes on her laptop, and I watched her professional face crack when I explained the details. She actually had to stop typing when I described the perfume and the nickname. Her hands hovered over the keyboard, and she looked genuinely disturbed by how cruel it all was. She asked me several questions about the timeline and who else witnessed what happened. My phone buzzed while we were talking, and Veronica had sent another photo of a positive pregnancy test. I asked her to show me the box or a date stamp or anything to prove when it was taken. She immediately texted back that I was being controlling and abusive for not believing her. The test in the photo could have been from anyone at any time, and I knew it. I realized I couldn't trust a single thing she showed me through a screen. 2 days later, Sailor forwarded me screenshots that made my stomach turn completely. Veronica had messaged her asking for advice on making a pregnancy look more real. She'd also asked if Sailor knew anyone who sold positive pregnancy tests online. The messages were from before she'd shown me that first test at my apartment. Everything started crashing down on me at once that week. The violation of Jasmine's memory kept replaying in my head over and over. The uncertainty about whether Veronica was actually pregnant made me feel crazy. The months of manipulation and mind games suddenly felt so heavy I could barely breathe. I found myself Googling therapists at 3 in the morning because I knew I needed help. I called the first one with good reviews, and Madeline had an opening that same week. I booked it immediately, knowing I couldn't handle this alone anymore. Her office had these soft blue walls and a white noise machine by the door. I sat on her couch and tried to explain everything, but ended up breaking down completely. I told her about Jasmine dying in a car accident when we were teenagers. I explained how Veronica had taken every sacred memory and turned it into a weapon. Madeline listened without any judgment on her face and occasionally asked questions that helped me see things differently. She pointed out patterns in Veronica's behavior that I'd been too close to notice. We talked about how grief made me vulnerable to this kind of manipulation. That night, I was finally starting to relax when my apartment buzzer started going off repeatedly. Veronica's voice came through the intercom crying and begging me to let her up. She kept pressing the button over and over while sobbing about needing to talk. I didn't open the door, but I did call building security to check on her. I told them she was upset and I wanted to make sure she got home safe. They confirmed she left the building and got in an Uber without any problems. I sat there shaking for an hour after she was gone, but felt proud of maintaining that boundary. The next day, Geeta sent me an email asking for a follow-up meeting about the work event. She explained they were reviewing all their security protocols for company parties now. They were also implementing new screening procedures for any vendors or entertainment hired for events. She assured me multiple times that what happened was completely inappropriate and unacceptable. She validated that I was handling everything the right way by documenting it all. She also mentioned they were considering mandatory training for managers about harassment and manipulation tactics. The company was taking this seriously as a safety issue for all employees going forward. Adam showed up at my desk the next morning with 2 coffees and sat on the edge of my desk while I worked. He mentioned that a few people had asked him if I was okay after what happened at the party. He'd been telling everyone I was dealing with some personal stuff and needed space right now. I noticed how he'd been running interference for me all week, steering conversations away from party gossip whenever I walked by. My phone buzzed with an email notification, and when I opened it, my stomach dropped completely. Veronica had emailed my boss directly with this long, crazy message about how I was emotionally abusing her and abandoning her while she was pregnant with my child. She'd copied half the company on it too, making wild accusations about my character and claiming I was dangerous. Before I could even respond, Geeta was already at my desk telling me not to worry about it. She'd already intercepted the email and was routing all of Veronica's work communications through HR from now on. She assured me she'd already talked to my boss and explained the situation was handled appropriately through proper channels. My boss had understood completely and wasn't concerned about my work performance at all. That afternoon, I had my regular therapy session with Madeline, and we spent most of it working on how to set clear boundaries with Veronica. She helped me write out a no-contact message that stated my boundaries without being mean or cruel about it. We practiced different ways Veronica might respond, so I'd be ready for whatever came next. Madeline had me read the message out loud several times until it felt natural and firm. The message was simple and direct, stating I would only communicate about pregnancy verification at a medical facility. All other contact needed to stop immediately for both our well-being. My hands were shaking as I typed it into my phone later that night. I sent it to Veronica's number, and then started going through all my social media accounts. My finger hovered over the block button on each platform for what felt like forever. Finally, I pressed it on Instagram, then Facebook, then everything else I could think of. The relief mixed with anxiety made me feel sick to my stomach. Within minutes, my phone started blowing up with calls from unknown numbers. Text messages poured in from new numbers I didn't recognize, all clearly Veronica using burner phones or apps. She cycled between threatening to kill herself and promising she'd get help if I'd just talk to her. One message said she was standing on a bridge, the next said she was checking into therapy. I screenshot every single one and saved them to my evidence folder, but didn't respond to any of them. It felt cruel ignoring her threats, but Madeline had warned me this would happen. The next morning, she sent me a blurry screenshot that looked like lab results showing pregnancy hormones. I forwarded it to Adam since he was good with tech stuff and asked what he thought. He pulled up the metadata on his computer and started laughing in this bitter way. The image had been downloaded from a medical website 2 days ago and edited in photo software yesterday. The patient name was conveniently cut off at the top, and the resolution was terrible on purpose. He showed me how to check this stuff myself, so I could verify any future proof she sent. Gita called me into her office later that week to let me know she was bringing Sailor in for an official statement. They needed a formal record of what Veronica had orchestrated at the party for their investigation. I sat in the conference room while Sailor gave her statement to Gita and another HR person. Sailor looked really uncomfortable the whole time, but she was professional about it. She explained everything Veronica had hired her to do and showed them all the messages and payment receipts. She kept apologizing to me and saying she had no idea how messed up the situation really was. After she finished her statement, she asked to be left out of any future proceedings. She'd done what she could to help, but needed to distance herself from the whole situation now. I thanked her for being honest and told her I understood completely. My next therapy session with Madeline went deep into why the Jasmine impersonation had hit me so hard. We talked about my original grief from losing her in that car accident when we were teenagers. Madeline helped me see how Veronica had specifically exploited that unhealed wound for maximum damage. She taught me these grounding exercises for when the smell of that perfume triggered panic attacks. We practiced breathing techniques and physical movements that would help regulate my nervous system when memories flooded back. She had me describe safe memories of Jasmine to reclaim some of those mental associations. 2 days later, Sailor forwarded me something that made me want to throw up. It was a voice note where Veronica was drunk and bragging to someone about buying pregnant urine online. She was laughing about how easy it was to fake pregnancy tests and manipulate the whole situation. Her exact words were that men were so stupid they'd believe anything if you showed them 2 pink lines. My hands shook as I saved it to my evidence folder, with all the other proof of her lies. The reality of her deception was finally completely undeniable, even though part of me had been hoping maybe she really was pregnant. That weekend, I spent the entire morning writing a careful email to officially end our relationship. Every sentence was crafted to be factual and inarguable, without any emotional language she could twist. I stated only verifiable facts about her behavior and my boundaries going forward. I didn't accuse her of lying or manipulation, just listed the specific actions that had occurred. The email took me 3 hours to write because I kept second-guessing every word choice. I clicked send on the email and copied Gita from HR, like she'd suggested during our last meeting. My shoulders dropped as 6 months of constant stress started melting away. Within 3 minutes, my phone buzzed with a photo from Veronica, showing a bunch of pill bottles spread across her bathroom counter, with the message that she was going to take them all because of what I'd done. My hand stayed steady as I dialed 911 and told them about the suicide threat, giving them her address and forwarding the photo she'd sent. The operator said they'd send officers for a welfare check right away. I sat on my couch and waited, fighting the urge to drive over there myself, like I would have done every other time before. An hour later, the police called back to confirm they'd made contact with Veronica and she'd been taken to the hospital for evaluation. They said she was safe and getting help. I thanked them and hung up, then made myself dinner instead of rushing to the hospital. The guilt sat heavy in my stomach, but Madeline had warned me this would happen and coached me through what to do. The next morning, my phone lit up with messages from Veronica calling me every name she could think of for humiliating her with the welfare check. She said I'd regret this and that I'd destroyed her life by having cops show up at her door. Then nothing. Complete silence. No more texts or calls or emails. The quiet felt weird after months of constant crisis, but also kind of peaceful. During my next session with Madeline, she pulled out a whiteboard and drew 2 circles on it. She explained this thing called the circle of control, where the inner circle was stuff I could actually control, and the outer circle was everything else. We spent the whole hour mapping out what went where. My actions and choices went in the inner circle, but Veronica's decisions and reactions went in the outer one. Seeing it drawn out like that made the weight on my chest ease up for the first time in months. I could only control my own stuff, not hers. At work the next day, I completely zoned out during a client meeting about quarterly projections. Adam noticed right away and jumped in with some data points to cover for me while I got my head together. After the client left, he pulled me aside and reminded me that taking care of myself wasn't being selfish. He suggested I should use some of those vacation days I'd been saving up forever. I nodded but didn't commit to anything yet. Gita called me into her office later that week to update me on the new security stuff they were putting in place. She showed me the new vendor screening process they'd created and the background check requirements for anyone working company events. There was also a whole new protocol for reporting weird incidents at work functions. She thanked me for bringing everything forward and said it had helped them find some major gaps in their safety procedures that needed fixing. A text came through from a number I didn't recognize claiming Veronica was having pregnancy complications and bleeding heavily. The message said she needed me at the hospital right away, or she might lose the baby. I texted back asking for the hospital name and which doctor was treating her so I could verify the emergency. The messages stopped immediately after that, no response at all. I screenshot everything and added it to my evidence folder on my laptop without responding again. Sailor sent me a message that weekend saying she needed to be removed from any future communication about this whole situation. She'd done what she could to help by giving her statement and providing evidence, but she needed to move on with her life now. I thanked her for being honest about everything, and for having the courage to come forward with the truth. Then I deleted her number from my phone like she'd asked. During therapy, Madeline brought up the idea of doing something to reclaim Jasmine's memory from all the trauma Veronica had caused. She suggested we plan a simple memorial ritual where I could visit places Jasmine and I went as kids and maybe write her a letter. We talked about creating new associations with her memory that could override the manipulated ones from the party. Saturday afternoon, I drove to the park where Jasmine and I used to play when we were little. I sat on the same bench where we'd eat ice cream after school and wrote her a long letter about everything that had happened. I told her about Veronica and the party and how sorry I was that her memory got twisted into something ugly. When I finished writing, I found one of those metal trash cans the Park Service uses and burned the letter safely inside it. The smoke drifted up into the sky and something loosened in my chest. Back at my car, I grabbed the bottle of Jasmine's perfume I'd been keeping as evidence and threw it in the park dumpster. I didn't need it anymore, and holding on to it was just keeping the bad memories alive. Monday morning, my phone started blowing up with screenshots from mutual friends showing Veronica's latest Instagram story about being abandoned by a narcissist during her pregnancy. The post had this artsy black and white photo of her looking sad with text about how some men pretend to be good just to destroy you when you're most vulnerable. 3 different people messaged asking if I was okay and what really happened. I sat at my kitchen table and typed out a simple response that I could copy and paste to anyone who asked about it. The message just said this was a private matter and I wished her well. I sent it to the first person who asked and it felt too cold, so I added that I appreciated their concern but wouldn't be discussing details. Adam came by after work with takeout, and I showed him the response I'd been sending people. He read it and shook his head, saying it sounded defensive like I had something to hide. We spent the next hour going back and forth on different versions until we landed on something that felt right. The final version was short and calm, without any emotion behind it. Adam had me practice saying it out loud a few times until it rolled off my tongue naturally. He pointed out that I didn't owe anyone an explanation for protecting myself from someone who hired an actress to pretend to be my dead sister. The next morning, Geeta called me into her office to wrap up the HR investigation officially. She had a whole folder of documentation including Sailor's statement and the recordings I'd provided. She went through each incident methodically, confirming there were no policy violations on my part. She showed me where she'd documented all of Veronica's harassment attempts, including the email to my boss and the fake social media accounts. The file would be kept permanently in case of future incidents, giving me institutional backing if things escalated. She thanked me again for bringing this forward and said it had helped them identify serious gaps in their event security. That afternoon, a text came through from Veronica's number, but the person said they were her friend asking for pregnancy clinic recommendations. They claimed Veronica was struggling and needed resources, but was too proud to reach out herself. I Googled some publicly available clinic links and forwarded them without any personal message. The person kept texting, asking if I had any advice or if I wanted to know how she was doing. I didn't respond to anything beyond sending the resource links. Thursday's therapy session with Madeline went deeper than usual. She pulled out a notepad and started mapping out my relationship history, pointing out how I kept choosing women who were in crisis. We talked about where this pattern came from, and she helped me see how I was attracted to chaos and people who needed saving. She asked if anyone had ever actually asked me to save them, or if I just assumed that was my job. The question hit hard because I realized Veronica never asked me to fix her. She just wanted me to use her like everyone else did. I thought about all the times I complimented Veronica's mind and personality when what she really wanted was validation about her looks. Madeline helped me see how I projected my own values onto her needs without ever asking what would actually help her feel loved. I assumed telling her she was smart and funny would heal her self-worth issues, but maybe that made things worse. She wanted me to desire her body because that's what made sense in her world. My refusal to objectify her probably felt like rejection, even though I meant it as respect. Friday night, Adam texted asking if I wanted to come to game night with some people from work. He made sure to mention it was completely sober and drama-free, just board games and snacks at his place. I almost said no out of habit, but forced myself to go. The whole evening was weirdly normal with people laughing about work stuff and arguing about game rules. Nobody asked about Veronica or the party incident. I actually had fun for the first time in months, remembering what regular social interaction felt like without constant crisis. Saturday morning, Veronica sent a long text saying she'd started therapy and wanted me to come to a session to work through things together. She said her therapist thought it would be helpful to have me there to process what happened between us. I stared at the message for 20 minutes before responding. My reply was short and kind but firm, saying I was glad she was getting help, but our no-contact boundary needed to stay in place. She sent 3 more messages trying to convince me, but I didn't answer them. That weekend, I went through all my apps and turned off read receipts so she couldn't see when I'd seen her messages. I set all my social media profiles to private and removed anyone I didn't actually know in real life. The constant anxiety about whether she was watching my stories or checking my posts finally stopped. I could post a photo or update my status without wondering if she'd see it and what she might do. The relief was immediate, and I wondered why I hadn't done it months ago. Monday morning, Geeta sent a final email about the investigation, thanking me for my cooperation throughout the process. She mentioned the company was rolling out new training for all employees based on this incident. The training would cover recognizing manipulation tactics and how to report concerning behavior at work events. She said something positive had come from the nightmare, and they were better prepared to protect employees now. The next therapy session with Madeline took a different turn when she pulled out index cards and started writing down scenarios. She handed me one that said, "Your mother calls crying, saying she'll kill herself if you don't come home for Christmas," and waited for my response. I practiced saying no while staying calm, keeping my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. We went through 20 different cards with her playing various people trying to guilt or threaten me into breaking boundaries. She pretended to be an ex threatening to share private photos if I didn't meet her, and I practiced saying I'd contact the police without getting angry or scared. Then she acted like a friend who said I was selfish for not lending them money, and I learned to say no without over-explaining or apologizing. Each scenario got harder, but I kept finding ways to stay firm without being mean or cold. She showed me how to use short sentences that didn't leave room for argument, like, "That doesn't work for me," or "I need to go now," instead of long explanations that people could pick apart. We practiced hanging up the phone mid-conversation when someone wouldn't respect a boundary, which felt impossible at first, but got easier each time. By the end of the session, I'd gone through 40 different manipulation tactics and found my voice with each one. That night around 2 a.m., I couldn't sleep and started typing out everything I wanted to tell Veronica about how much she'd hurt me. My fingers flew across the phone screen writing about the Jasmine thing, about how sick it made me feel, about all the times she'd made me question my own sanity. I wrote 3 pages about the pregnancy test and how I knew she was lying but couldn't prove it. Then I wrote about how I'd actually loved her despite everything, how I'd wanted to help her heal, but realized I couldn't fix someone who didn't want to be fixed. I stared at the messages for 10 minutes, my thumb hovering over the send button, then deleted every single word. The act of writing it all out had loosened something in my chest, even though she'd never see it. I typed and deleted 5 more drafts over the next hour, each one saying something different, but sending any of them would just give her an opening to pull me back in. The next day, Adam and I grabbed lunch and he asked what would make me feel safer at future work events. I hadn't thought about having any control over it, but he was right that I could make requests. We made a list on a napkin of reasonable things to ask HR, like having security check vendor credentials, requiring name tags for all outside contractors, and having a buddy system for employees who felt uncomfortable. Adam suggested asking for events to have designated quiet spaces where people could go if they felt overwhelmed and mandatory check-ins for anyone who seemed distressed. I added that I wanted clear protocols for reporting concerning behavior during events, not just after. We came up with 15 specific suggestions that felt practical and would actually help people. I typed them all up that afternoon and sent them to Geeta, who responded within an hour saying she'd already started implementing half of them and loved the other ideas. Saturday morning, I drove to the cemetery for the first time since the party, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. Jasmine's grave looked the same as always with the small angel statue our parents had chosen and fresh flowers someone had left. I sat on the grass and told her everything about what Veronica had done, how she'd used our childhood memories as weapons. I told her about the perfume and the nickname and the scar, crying so hard I could barely breathe. The tears felt different this time, though, clean instead of tangled up with manipulation and confusion. I stayed there for 2 hours just talking to her like we used to when we were kids, and when I left I felt lighter somehow. Sunday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number that just said, "Hi, this is Veronica. I'm in therapy now. Twice a week. Just wanted you to know." No asking for anything. No manipulation. Just information. I stared at it for a long time, feeling a mix of relief and caution, glad she was getting help, but knowing I couldn't let my guard down. I didn't respond, but I didn't delete it either, just moved it to a folder I'd made for documentation. Monday night, I pulled out an old notebook and started writing the whole story from the beginning, every detail I could remember about our relationship. I wrote about the first date and the hotel room, about all the times she'd tried to make me use her, about the money she sent and the party setup. I filled 30 pages with everything that had happened, not to share with anyone, but just to have my own record of the truth. Seeing it all written out in order helped me trust my memory and stop second-guessing myself about whether things really happened the way I remembered. Tuesday, I went through my phone settings and turned on every privacy and safety feature I could find. I set it to automatically block calls from unknown numbers and saved all the crisis hotline numbers Geeta had given me. I added the security team's direct line and the local police non-emergency number to my favorites for quick access. Each little step made me feel more protected and in control of my own safety. Tonight, I'm cooking pasta in my quiet apartment with music playing softly in the background. The book I'm reading sits on the counter, and I take breaks between stirring the sauce to read a few pages. The space feels normal and safe again after months of chaos and fear. My chest still aches when I think about Jasmine, and I genuinely hope Veronica gets the help she needs. But I'm okay now. Really okay. Able to function and heal and move forward with my life. And that's my side of it. I'm always curious to hear yours, though. Scroll down and leave a comment so we can keep the conversation going.